Okay, welcome everybody. This is a candidate forum put on, as you can see, by the Fort Wayne Media Collaborative and the Mike Down Center for Indiana Politics. Love the huge crowd here, and as well, thank the candidates for showing up. And we want to thank also the Allen County Public Library for helping host this event, and Donnie and Leanne in particular, who could accommodate what we needed. And particularly from the Fort Wayne Media Collaborative, thank Dave Gong and Brianna for making this digitally available after this event is over for those who couldn't be here.
You need to switch your mic on. We're not hearing it.
You got any feed for me? Okay. So again, thanks again to the Fort Wayne Media Collaborative for putting this together, Allen County Public Library, and the candidates for showing up on Masters Sunday. So we have our own Masters here. So I hope you take care of that. And we also want to thank the League of Women Voters who have been providing some information, the vote11.org. I encourage everyone to look at some of the issues and some of the other things, registration, anything you need to know about polling place, early voting, and anything else is available from that great website. So we are going to have time for questions from the audience members, and there are two microphones, as you can see here. We would ask and request that family of candidates and campaign associates of the candidates not be the ones to ask these questions, but actually allow some of the public who came out today to take first swipe. We've also put together some questions. We did this last week for the Democratic candidates for the same office, so it worked out very well. We are going to go random kind of order in response. There'll be 2 minutes per person after an opening statement, and the opening statement will be a minute, and then we'll have a closing statement that's a minute. But we first will begin with Senator Zay, who could not be here today. He's going to have a video quickly just talking about himself, if that's okay. And then we'll move on to the introductions. All right?
Hello, I'm Wendy. I would like to thank the Fort Wayne Media Collaborative and the Mike Down Center for Indiana Politics for hosting this forum. Unfortunately, I am unable to be with you today as we celebrate the success of my son's many years of work on the football field as he's honored as an all-state athlete at the Indiana Complex today. Family is very important to us, and his mother and I believe that we need to be with him at this time of celebration in our family. As your 3rd District Congressional candidate, Andy Zay is a vote for secure borders, lower taxes, and safer communities. Talk has been very cheap already in this campaign. Now is the time to elect an honest, proven conservative, one that has stood for you in the last 8 years as a state senator, and one that will stand for you in the halls of Congress in Washington, D.C. Remember, in May, vote Zay. Hello, I'm Andy Zay. I would like to thank the Fort Wayne Media Collaborative and the... All
right, thank you very much. So we're going to start here again. We're going to go in rotating order for your opening comment, all right? We'll begin with Tim Smith.
Great. Well, thank you. My name is Tim Smith. I have been married for 34 years to my beautiful wife, Angela. We have 5 adult kids and 17 grandkids, soon to be 18 in a couple months, which is still remarkable to me. They're all 7 and under. I was born and raised in New Haven. My dad was a preacher. I went to New Haven High School and IPFW, not PFW. I was a political science major of all things. I did an internship in the Bush Quayle White House in 1989, which was fun. And went to IU Law School down in Indianapolis, came back and started working for a company called MedPro Group, which today is a Warren Buffett-owned medical malpractice insurance company. I was fortunate enough to be on a team that grew that company from about $200 million to what it is today, about $2 billion. I'm currently the CEO of a mental health nonprofit called Lasting Change with some subsidiaries. We have about 500 employees, and we are honored to help kids and families in all 92 counties across Indiana who are struggling with their mental health. And professionally, it's the most significant and meaningful thing I've ever done in my life, and I'm honored to do it. I'm running for Congress to end wokeness and expand freedom. I'll elaborate on those 4 words throughout this forum, but in short, I believe the country has slidden a direction that is unhealthy, and I believe that our freedoms are being infringed at many different turns, and I'll look forward to talking about how I plan in Congress to end wokeness and expand freedom. I'm Tim Smith.
Great, thank you. Grant Bucher?
Hi, my name is Grant Bucher, and I too am running to serve you in Congress. I'm joined here today by my lovely wife, Melinda, and 2 boys, Grayson and Gentry. So be sure to say hi to them afterward. They would love to give you a brochure. I was born and raised in Wells County, Melinda in Adams County. Together we've lived in Allen County. Grayson was born in California, Gentry in Michigan, and now we live in Stutzman County. So we've been all over the country and in many different parts of Northeast Indiana, and have spent our lives not in politics, but in construction. I attended Purdue University and received my engineering degree there. I also attended Indiana University and received my MBA. And I've been applying those in the construction industry for the last decade and a half. First, I worked for Shambaugh & Son, which many of you are probably familiar with in town. And in the last 2 years, transitioned to Wygand Construction. With Wygand, I've had the opportunity to manage about $65 million worth of work up at Steuben County, building their new judicial center, and then we've got 4 projects going on right now at Hillsdale College. On top of that, we're trying to run a campaign as best we can, and it's been a true pleasure because ultimately I want to inspire renewal in our nation. We have so many problems. We're so divided, where we've allowed perversity to penetrate every level of society. We have a government that is distant and feels corrupt, and we've got crises at our border, in our financial system and internationally. But you know what? So long as Jesus is on the throne and our Constitution is intact, America always has hope, but I believe that we need a new generation of servant leaders to rise up and work alongside you, the wise citizens, to inspire this renewal. So I love the opportunity to be here today, and thank you so much for each of you who have taken time out of your beautiful Sunday to come and join us. Thanks.
Wendy Davis?
Hi, I'm Judge Wendy Davis, now candidate for the 3rd Congressional District, and I am running to bring back a strong America, working with Donald Trump, our next president. I grew up here on a small farm in Northeast Indiana, went to college and law school where I met my husband, who's here today, in uniform. He's a lieutenant colonel at the 122nd and came directly from there. And met my husband, got married my 2nd year of law school, and finished my law career down in Texas, because at the time he was stationed at Fort Sam Houston with the U.S. Army. I started my career as a high-level prosecutor appointed to a federally funded drug and violent crimes task force. I got more death threats, believe it or not, as a high-level prosecutor than I ever have as a judge. So we came back here to Northeast Indiana to raise our kids. We have 3 children. Madison, who lives in Dallas, she's 26. My middle son is also in uniform, a West Point grad, now stationed at Fort Carson. And we have an 18-year-old. So why am I pivoting from the bench to run for Congress? All I can do as a judge is react to issues. So I saw all of Biden's failed policies here in Northeast Indiana clog my courtroom. Illegal immigration, fentanyl addicts, fentanyl's everywhere. Illegals from Mexico that can't even speak our language committing crimes. Culturally, I've been forced to preside over minor gender changes, which I would not grant. And when the abortion laws changed, I had to deal with abortion issues clogged in my courtroom. I am a strong Christian, conservative, pro-life. So it was time for me to pivot and quit reacting to all of these American problems that Joe Biden has started. And I want to be proactive, pick up the mantle where Jim Banks has laid it down, and run strong as a conservative. I want to help close the borders, get our economy back running, put a balanced budget amendment on the floor, make sure we get crime under control, make sure boys don't play in women's sports. There's so many things we need to do, and I hope to stand with President Trump to bring back a strong America. I'm Wendy Davis. I would love your vote May 7th.
Thank you. John Kenworthy?
Thank you. I'm John Kenworthy, and I'm running on character, integrity, and experience. For character, I grew up on the southeast side of Fort Wayne to a humble beginning in a blue-collar family. Right after graduating from Concordia Lutheran High School, I enlisted in the Army, which was shortly after 9/11, and ended up serving in the hardest hit unit in Iraq. We lost over 30 men. I came back in 2008 off active duty to the recession, and then to Obamacare, where I was at that time going to IPFW and political science as well, and lost my health insurance, and my family got hours cut because of the government overreach. Integrity is important. It's important to do things for the right reasons, not just to try and get credit or get on the news. It's also important to approach things looking at all the facts, not just the facts that are convenient to your side. And finally, when Senator Braun decided that he was going to run for governor, I didn't choose to go and get a lobbying job or stay on with him while he was a lame duck and not able to get things done. I came to run for the 3rd district because it's important to me. The district is important, the country is important, and the future for our kids and children are important. And finally, experience. Experience matters. We can't send somebody to Washington that's going to take 2 or 3 terms just to get spun up because they don't know about the issues or they don't know the details. We need somebody that's been there and has gotten things done. While I worked for Senator Braun, 3 of the bills that I authored for him were signed into law. And 2 of those happened at times when we didn't have the presidency or a majority. I know how to accomplish things. I also got 3 unelected bureaucrats fired from the VA for dereliction of duty and harming our veterans. I know how to get things done. Again, I'm asking for your support because I'm running on character, integrity, and experience, and I will be ready to go on day 1.
Okay, Marlin Stutzman.
Good afternoon. It's great to be here. I am former Congressman Marlin Stutzman. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all today. I'm a husband to my wife, Christy, who's here with me this afternoon, and also a father to Peyton and Preston, who are now 22 and 18, and growing fast. I'm a business owner. After I served in Washington from 2010 to 2016, we came back home and continued to build the family businesses. I'm the CEO of the Stutzman Group, which focuses primarily on agriculture and manufacturing. Running as the tested, proven conservative in Washington. It's always good to be out in public and show folks that I don't have a tail and that I don't have horns, as you might be seeing on TV recently. But I think in consideration of what's happening over the past 24 hours, truly reminds us that our world is facing some very dangerous circumstances. And the attacks in Israel from Iran are going to be something that we are going to have to deal with in the next Congress. So whoever's sitting on this stage that has the opportunity to represent the 3rd District in Washington, needs to take Fort Wayne, take Indiana values to Washington and show that we know how to get things done and we know how to fix things and we know also how to lead. The circumstances in Israel right now are truly concerning, and I believe that we need President Trump to be the president to help lead us through these very difficult waters, and also he's going to need strong leadership in the Congress. I've been to Israel several times. I've been to the Middle East. I understand the need and the support that Israel needs to have, and I'll continue to support them. I do have the support of Congressman Jim Jordan, also Senator Rand Paul, and I'm also the only candidate on the stage here that has a verified conservative rating by the National Faith and Family Groups in the iVoter Guide. And so I look forward to this conversation, and I would ask for your support on May the 7th. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Felker.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Again, Mike Felker. I'm your blue-collar guy running for U.S. Congress. Been working up at Zimmer Biomet over in Kosciuszko County for the last 18 years. I served 20 years in the Indiana Army National Guard, where I retired as the 1st Sergeant. 2 combat tours in Iraq in 2003 and 2008. I've got a family of 5. I've got 2 older children, who one's serving in uniform right now, and I got a daughter who's finishing up college to be a nurse, and I've got 3 young kids in public schools right now. Why am I running for Congress? I'm going to give you a quick synapse of that, because it's all about you. It's about the people of this district and the people of this country. Thomas Jefferson said that an enlightened citizenry is indispensable for the functioning of a republic. that self-government is not possible unless the people are sufficiently educated where they can execute oversight. So I believe that we need to change the strategy that we've been doing as a people for the last 25, 30 years, where we elect our members of Congress and we give them all of our power to fix our problems that never get fixed. So we need to change that. We also, what I would love to see happen is to be more educated about who we're electing and making sure that we're not electing the very people who are giving us the government that we're trying to get away from. How do we do this? What's the solution? Because all of these problems that we have are not going to fix themselves unless we actually have an end solution. And the solution is you, the people of this district and the people of this country. We will have quarterly town halls as your member of Congress. You can't execute oversight over what government and our members are doing if you're not educated and understand what's going on, so we will have quarterly town halls. Secondly, I want to do something that's kind of inventive that we should have been doing the last 25 years, which is we need to organize our gun community. Gun community is the one group of people who votes. Our Second Amendment is constantly under a threat and under attack by the Democrat Party, typically. And so we need to stand up our gun community, and we need to also be the prevailing voice when it comes to electing our members of Congress, our Senate, and of course, down to the sheriff level. We want to make sure that the people that we're electing for this district are going to follow the Constitution and not go around it. Last but not least, which I believe is the most important, is we got to get back to our influence and leverage over the politicians. We have to take that back from them, and that's what I intend to do as your member of Congress. Thank you.
Thanks. Eric Whalen.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. We do need a strategy change. We need a strategy change within the party, within the Republican Party. I'm the Liberty and Constitutional candidate, and like you, I am sick of big government Republicans who offer nothing for the fight for liberty or the Constitution. So what makes me different? I'm against any money or weapons going to foreign nations, including Israel, unlike Wendy. I support ending all foreign aid and will stop funding endless war. I'm against all gun control, unlike Andy Zay, who voted to ban Glock switches here in Indiana. All gun laws should be repealed, and the ATF should be abolished. I'm against banning TikTok. Unlike Tim, who claims to be wanting to expand freedom, I actually believe in protecting free speech. And I'm against the police state and warrantless surveillance, unlike Marlin, who voted to extend unconstitutional surveillance and extend parts of the Patriot Act that were set to expire. The Patriot Act also should be repealed, and unconstitutional spying on Americans needs to stop. Now, I offer a different perspective than most of my opponents as the Liberty and Constitutional candidate.
Okay, thank you. As we enter the question thing, I gave some latitude here because it's a candidate forum and they want to hear from you. It's not a debate, but just try and keep it to 2 minutes. We can go a little bit over, but I want to bring this thing out because that's loud and disruptive. So we're going to go in reverse order on this one, and then we're going to vary it up a little bit. So just so you understand. The first question. There's considerable disagreement within the Republican House Conference about whether or how much the U.S. should continue to support Ukraine's military defense against Russia. Please explain your views on whether and how the U.S. should support Ukraine's bilaterally and through through NATO. And again, we're going to start with Eric Whalen.
Yeah, there is a debate within the party. The party does seem to be split on this in a lot of ways. I've heard everything from we need to fund Ukraine after the border wall is finished or after the border is secure, whatever that means. Who really knows what that means? What does a secure border really even mean? That statements like that are politicians who want to kick the can down the road. That's a non-answer. We shouldn't be funding Ukraine. Ukraine shouldn't be getting one single penny from us. You know, we're facing a $35 trillion debt. We don't have money to be sending off to foreign countries. We don't have money to be propping up Ukraine. We don't have money to be propping up Israel. You know, we create a lot of our problems with our foreign intervention. We don't go across the world to solve issues. No, the U.S. empire creates these problems. And we send money over there, but really where it ends up going to, it's funneled to K Street, and it's funneled to the arms manufacturers and the military-industrial complex. And who pays for that? We do. We pay for that. We pay for all that spending through higher prices, through inflating prices. So no, we absolutely do not need to be giving Ukraine or any other foreign country a nickel. You know, it's not constitutional either. You know, what we need to do is go back and look at the Constitution and see what we should be doing. You know, nowhere in the Constitution does it say, yeah, go ahead and throw some money at foreign nations around the world. You know, we haven't even declared war since World War II, yet we're fighting all these wars overseas, we're funding all these games. You know, it needs to stop. And that's one really big difference between myself and my opponents. I will not support funding the endless war. Now, some of my opponents will give you conditions and certain prerequisites and say, okay, maybe not now, but later it's a possibility. It shouldn't be a possibility. We need to get back to the Constitution.
Okay, thank you. Michael Felker, again, your views on whether and how the U.S. should support Ukraine bilaterally and through NATO.
Well, I'm going to pull a full stop here and agree 100% with Eric. We've got to get out of Ukraine. We've got to totally separate the United States from what that corrupt government and its corrupt members are doing, the President Zelensky. So Americans need to get educated in all things government. And what I mean by that is, a few months ago, Zelensky came out on, I don't know if he was here in the United States, but I believe he made a statement saying that he needed some more funding from the United States in the month of March. Well, early February, the European Union gave Zelensky $50 billion. So approximately 3 weeks, I'm going to say later, he's asking for money from the United States. Most Americans who are pro-Ukraine were asking us to give more money. We're trying to tell everybody to give more money to Ukraine. They need it. They need it. Well, they don't know the full story. They don't understand that the European Union just gave them $50 billion. So I'm not for sure why they burnt through $50 billion in 3 weeks or not. But so people need to understand, number one, the whole story, because we're not getting it, especially from our media. But we don't need to be giving Ukraine any money, and not because they're not our ally or friend or we want to see them suffer. It's because we don't have the money to do it. We're $35 trillion in the hole, and I don't think everybody quite understands that there is not a money tree sitting outside these walls where government can just pull off a couple million or billion or trillion whenever they need to. It's real money. Every time the United States borrows or spends $1 trillion of your money, it's coming out of your paycheck. It's $6,060 per taxpayer. I'm not talking about the people who aren't paying taxes, the retirees, but you, the taxpayer. And so we've got to get back to where we're understanding what real money looks and feels like. And right now we're trusting them to give it to whoever wants it. And we need to keep the money here in the United States where we and fix our own problems first.
Okay, thank you. Marlin Stutzman, your views on whether and how the U.S. should support Ukraine bilaterally and through NATO.
Yeah, well, I would agree with Mike and Eric. The problem that we have today is that we don't have leadership in Washington, D.C. We are now at $35 trillion in debt. That's $100,000 per American that we would owe if we were to pay that debt today. And the rate that the national debt has grown over the past 4 years is astronomical. In 1980, when Ronald Reagan took office, the national debt was right at $1 trillion. And since then, that took over 200 years to get to that point. And now we're at $35 trillion, and Congress just lifted the debt ceiling basically without any regard of any limits. And so when it comes to Ukraine, I don't believe we should be funding Ukraine. We have our own invasion happening on the southern border. Over 7 million that we know of, illegals have come across the southern border. I was down at the border in Yuma, Arizona a couple of months ago, and we need to finish the wall. We need to fund the wall to be able to secure our own country. I have no problem supporting allies around the world. One of the things that we know in Ukraine is that there is fraud, there's corruption, there is abuse. Under the circumstances that the Biden family has, with them being under investigation with money laundering and corruption with Ukraine, I don't think it is wise at all to give Ukraine funding to fight this war. I do believe that we should help lead the coalitions in diplomacy, but I don't believe that we should be spending money there when we have our own problems here at home. I do believe that we need to stand with Israel. Israel is a partner. Israel is a democracy in the Middle East in a very dangerous neighborhood. A lot of these problems are the lack of leadership from America. Joe Biden, our president, since he's become president, has basically let the world go on fire. Because you look at what happened with Russia invading Ukraine, and now, of course, Hamas attacks Israel. And now we have Iran attacking Israel. We need strong leadership. We need experience in Washington, and that's what I would plan to be a part of.
Thank you. John Kenworthy, your views on whether and how the U.S. should support Ukraine bilaterally and through NATO.
Yes, so I do believe that we should be supporting Ukraine. I was part of a war that we shouldn't have been involved in, and we didn't properly fund our troops there. And that weighs on me heavily. We do not need to be the world police. We do not need to be nation building everywhere. But on the flip side, we need to stay involved. We need to go back to the Reagan time frame when we were a leader of the free world. It is important, especially with so many bad actors around the world. We look at Russia. Russia is not only violating the sovereignty of another nation, they're attacking us. In 2016, they interfered with our election. It was proven. I don't believe President Trump had anything to do with it, but they interfered with our election. After that, and since then, they've been sponsoring hacking groups that hack our pipelines and hack our hospitals and hold them hostage for ransom. This isn't acceptable. These are direct attacks on the United States. They might not be a kinetic attack like a bomb or a missile, but they have an impact on citizens right here. And to have the opportunity to degrade their capabilities without spilling a single drop of American blood, I think that's a good deal. And it shows leadership, and it shows that we'll be there for our NATO allies. And yes, some of them need to pick up the pace on spending, but many of them spend more than the United States per GDP on defense, trying to help out and being good allies. And we need to show that we're going to be a good deterrent for them. So yes, I would do it. That being said, what the others have said is correct. We are $35 trillion in debt, which is why I think the aid that does go needs to be ammunition, needs to be old weapon systems, needs to be intelligence, needs to be weapon systems that we confiscated from the Houthis, which is something that we saw recently. These are ways that we can do this without incurring more debt. Or we need to do like President Trump himself said and structure the aid as a loan. Or maybe like Speaker Johnson wanted to do with Israel and use an offset from somewhere else in the military budget, because there's plenty of places in the military budget where we can save, and the value that we get out of being strong leaders on this is worth that trade-off.
Okay, thank you. Wendy Davis, again, your views on whether and how the U.S. should support Ukraine bilaterally and through NATO.
So my stance has been very clear on this, not one more dime to Ukraine without first getting our economy under control and securing our own southern borders. As a judge, I spent so much time putting fentanyl addicts into drug court and illegal drug dealers into our prisons, and this is all coming through the border that I have seen firsthand. Joe Biden has messed up this whole Ukraine war. Donald Trump, what did he do to deter that, to deter Russia? He gave Ukraine weapons. He gave Ukraine weapons that deterred the war. Joe Biden did not do that. He just wrote a blank check and gave them money that we cannot afford as Americans. Now, do I want this war to expand? I have two in uniform that are deployable right now. Of course, I don't want I don't want Putin to push into Poland, but we don't have the money right now. Our borders right now is one of the biggest invasions that we have ever seen in America. So we've got to secure our borders. I also agree, though, when it comes to Israel, as a strong Christian, What does it say in Genesis? I will bless those that bless thee, and I will curse those that curse thee. I do believe that we have to stand by Israel and let them do what they need to do to win this war. Israel and America have a common enemy in Iran. And so I believe we've got to stand with Israel, but when it comes to Ukraine, again, I blame Joe Biden for where we are right now, but we've got to secure our own borders, and we've got to get our spending under control and get our economy back in action. And I would put a balanced budget amendment on the floor of the House every year as your next Congresswoman. So that's my view on Ukraine.
Okay, thank you. Grant Bucher, your view on whether and how the U.S. should support Ukraine bilaterally and through NATO.
I kind of thought you were going to switch it up there on me after I was prepared to talk about this. No, appreciate the question. I guess fundamentally my response to this is my heart goes out to the people of Ukraine, but I do not believe that your tax dollars should. I'm really grateful for the community that we grew up in, Adams and Wells County. They are sponsoring about 80 different refugees from Ukraine, and they've got a good community there providing support. So grateful for what the things Northeast Indiana families are doing to get involved in this process. But from a federal standpoint, I believe that our government needs to get back out of the situation and should not have entered it in the first place. So where I come from on that, number one, the U.S. has no interest in being an enemy to Russia, an autocratic, state-led by a Machiavellian dictator. In the same way, we have no interest in being involved with Ukraine, a autocratic state led by a Machiavellian dictator. Secondly, Ukraine and Israel, I don't understand why their borders are more important than our own. I believe that, as many have shared, that we need to address the issues that we've got here at home, and everything takes resources, right? There's limited resources in the world, and we've got to direct those where they benefit the United States citizens the most. If we, look back at our founding principles, George Washington warned us not to get ourselves entangled with other nations' affairs, and I think we'd be wise to heed that foreknowledge that he had shared with us, and make sure that we start to address the things at home again before we try being world police. So where do we go from here? I don't think we should have gotten involved in it from the first place, but now that we are in it, how do we back out? And the things that I have to look at are history. What does history teach us? Back in the 1990s, when Bosnia was being invaded by Serbia, it was a horrific time, similar to what we're seeing today with Russia and Ukraine. And the United States got involved. Bill Clinton actually went and showed a heavy hand from the United States by attacking militarily and then calling everybody to the table to end it. To date, Joe Biden's administration has just been tanking any peace talks that Ukraine and Russia have had. And so I think it's critical that we have a more rational individual at the helm of our nation who then pushes both of those states to come to peace talks, because ultimately the people that are paying for this war are the men and women on the Russian side who are giving their lives, the men and women on the Ukrainian side that are giving their lives, and you and I who are paying into inflation to help support this ongoing war. So, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Tim Smith, your views on whether and how the U.S. should support Ukraine bilaterally and through NATO.
On Ukraine, I'm a no. Period. On Israel, I'm supporting Israel. What we need is a framework to make these international decisions. Here's my framework. It's 2 words. America first. What has happened in recent years? $3 trillion spent in primarily Iraq and Afghanistan over 20 years. Vietnam. President Obama and Vice President Biden shipped $400 million of cash on pallets to Iran. They unfroze up to $150 billion of assets that the world had frozen of Iran's. What happened next? Iran funded Hamas and Hezbollah. And we find ourselves where we are today, with President Biden essentially chastising Israel for defending themselves after Hamas did the worst atrocities since World War II to children and women, including elderly women in Israel. The lack of a foreign policy is one of our big problems. I can't wait to talk about debt and border. But a lack of foreign policy is one of our major problems, and we do not have a policy. My framework is America first. It's real simple. I want America to be the most compassionate nation in the world. I think it honors God. And I think there was a time, about 150 years, when we were. And it came through Ellis Island, and there was a process. And by the way, it was a president from Indiana who put the policy in place around and through Ellis Island. We can do it again. But we can't be the most compassionate nation in the world with the debt and deficit that we're running, with an open border that allows China to send young military-aged men across our border constantly. The U.S. is the #1 purchaser of sex trafficking in the world across the border. Why do I mention that in an America First context? That seems strange. Because an America First context builds a wall, enforces the law, and puts a tourniquet on what is our biggest domestic geographic problem, which is the border. I'm a no on Ukraine. I'm a yes on Israel because I have an America First framework through which to make these decisions.
Okay, thank you, and we will get to those issues, Tim. So
Can't wait.
I'm glad. We have to start first, though, because this is a Republican primary. Last week, we, with the Democrats, went in to look at divisions and stuff like this. So I hope you understand where we're going with this, trying to draw out differences before this big decision this district's electorate has to face, the Republican electorate. So we want to first begin in Indiana's 6th congressional district. Representative Greg Pence is retiring and has complained about, in his words, the chaos in the Republican conference. What's your view of the state of the Republican conference? You will be joining if you're elected. Specifically, would you support returning power to the party's leadership for governing efficiency? Or do you sympathize more with those, many in the Freedom Caucus, who are holding out for more ideologically pure processes in the chamber? And we're going to begin with John Kenworthy.
So the state of the Republican conference is very dismaying. The Freedom Caucus, I sympathize and agree with many of their views, but there's a reason why I would not join the Freedom Caucus, and it is very simply that they do not govern. And we've seen this time again. If you look at any of their records, and Jim Jordan, who is a hero of the Freedom Caucus, is one of them, go take a look at Congress.gov and see how many bills he's introduced and how many have gotten signed into law. How far has he pushed the needle to the right? And the answer is almost none. He's gotten a lot of time on Fox News, but as far as achieving things and getting laws changed and moving our country in a conservative direction, you can't say no all the time. You can't be an absolutist all the time. There are certain things I will never compromise on. Life is one of them. The Second Amendment is another. But there are some times where if we can get an 80% deal, maybe it's worth giving them that 20% because it pushes the needle to the right. And that's how we got here. We didn't get here in one big fell sweep by the Democrats acting in coordination. We got here over decades and generations of them chipping away a little bit at a time while we've had this ideal of all or nothing. You cannot throw the Hail Mary every single time or you will never get down the field. I'm not saying that we have to compromise on things like the debt, but we have to make sure we're focusing on what the end goal truly is. Aside from that, I would say that as far as order and rules, we need to take away this power of one member to hold the House hostage. And I will not vote for a leader that would keep a rule like that in place. We also need to go back to regular order. We need to be debating on each of the appropriations bills, authoring amendments to each of the appropriations bills, taking things one at a time in their specific categories. We shouldn't have to look at something that has to do with the EPA in a same bill as has to do with food stamps. We need to make sure that we're back at regular order and we're doing things the right way and getting away from these 1,000, 2,000, sometimes 5,000-page omnibus bills, because that's where the pork is coming from.
Great, thank you. Wendy Davis, would you support returning power to the party's leadership, or are you more sympathizing with those ideologically pure processes in the House?
Yeah, so I want to go back to our Constitution, because obviously as a judge, I raised my hand to ensure that the Constitution was interpreted in its purest form. And that means that we have a constitutional republic, and that means that your next congresswoman, your next person has to make sure we are representing you in the 3rd district and representing what our founding fathers originally did. I think there's absolute chaos in the House right now, absolute chaos. We need to band together as Republicans. I agree with all of the issues that the Freedom Caucus has, and I'm glad there's voices from the Freedom Caucus that are saying that, but we cannot fight against each other. We've got to come together to defeat Joe Biden. I'm running to bring back a strong America, and a strong America means we put Donald Trump back in the White House, we take back the Senate, we get rid of the rhinos that are in there, and we take back the House and keep a majority. What does that mean then? Once we get that, we work together to defeat Joe Biden and everything that he and the Democrats have destroyed in this country. We need to secure our border, get our economy rolling again. We need to be energy independent. We need to take back our education system and make sure our kids, I'm for national school choice. We need to make sure that our agriculture industry here in the 3rd district, we have so much agriculture. We need as Republicans to come together and support all of these things that I just outlined and work with Donald Trump to make sure we can turn this ship around. So I don't like the fact that our House right now is in such chaos. Look, they're not getting anything done. And as a judge, I mentioned this, I could not kick the can down the road. I had problems in front of me in my courtroom, and I had to solve those problems. I'm going to do the same thing as your next congresswoman. I'm not going to just kick the can down the road and create a bunch of chaos. But I will stand firm on my constitutional beliefs, my Christian beliefs, my values. I will make sure that I put the American people in the 3rd district first and come together as Republicans. So I'm running to bring back a strong America, and I think as Republicans we need to come together but fight for those conservative values that the Northeast Indiana constituency demands.
Thank you. Marlin Stutzman, would you support returning power to the party's leadership, or do you sympathize more with those ideologically pure processes in the chamber?
Well, first of all, I think a national school choice program is the worst idea. We don't need the federal government controlling more of our education system. We need to have them controlling much less, and I would actually support abolishing the Department of Education. And so I believe that there's balance. I was actually one of the founding members of the Freedom Caucus. I have seen how leadership has operated in the conference and on the House floor. Unfortunately, we have a problem on both ends. I don't think the Freedom Caucus is exactly what it was when I first was a part of it. There are some folks there that have a different agenda, and I don't agree with it. I don't think Marjorie Taylor Greene is the best leader that, or should be the face of the Republican conference. I don't think that vacating the chair every time the speaker makes a mistake that they don't like should be put to the floor, because it does create chaos. At the same time, I don't believe that Kevin McCarthy was a good speaker. He tried, unfortunately, the speakers lately have been trying to control everything from the speaker's office, and that's why there's friction. We need a leader who will give a vision and who will bring people together. I'm a CEO. We have about 300 employees throughout our businesses, and I have to go in and make sure that our team is working together for the common goal, for the vision that we have as a business. And I would do that again in Washington. I think that the Speaker's office continues to try to put these massive spending bills, or whatever bill, on the floor with limited time for the members to actually read and understand. I served in the state legislature, and I understand regular order that John mentioned. John is right. Regular order keeps us from a lot of these problems that the conference is running into. If we would follow regular order, it would then allow every member to have a voice for their district. It would allow the majority to move forward. It allows the opportunity to offer amendments and say, okay, you know what? even if my amendment fails, I'm willing to at least put it on the floor. If it fails, at least I had a chance. The leadership is not even allowing amendments to go to the floor without a lot of rigmarole. So it has to be a balance. There has to be leadership. I think a leader like Newt Gingrich, he brought a lot of folks together. But unfortunately, the speakers, the leaders of our conference lately have ended up with very bad records, whether it was Kevin McCarthy, who lied to a lot of folks. And I'll just point this out too, Kevin McCarthy is behind a lot of the ads that are running against me right now because I called him out for lying to me and Jim Jordan. I do think Jim Jordan has a great record. He doesn't, it's not always the measurement of getting bills signed by the president. It's a matter of how do we move policy forward. Jim Jordan's role is to make sure investigations are being done appropriately through the committee process. So I believe that it takes people who are willing to work together, but following regular order would eliminate a lot of the problems within the conference.
Okay, Graham Bucher, would you support returning power to the party's leadership, or do you more sympathetic to those more ideologically pure processes in the chamber?
Sure. First of all, my allegiance here lies with the people of Northeast Indiana. I do not think that it's wise of us to return power to the party leadership, nor do I think it was wise that it ever went there in the first place. George Washington, in his farewell address, warned us of the woes that will come if we allow party politics to prevail in the United States. He said that over time, this engine that has been created to accomplish a specific thing is going to get it turned against people because it's going to quit serving the interests of the many and begin usurping power from them and serving the interests of the few. So I think a lot of the problems that we have in the United States today are related to party politics in the first place. I think that it would be wise if we were to start breaking down bills, as people have mentioned, and allowing debate on the floor to be good and pure again. Everything that we break into committee for and to get people to agree on what's happening is really just taking this, the public discourse that should be happening in front of you and I and making it happen behind closed doors. And then when it comes to the floor, the party says, hey, this is a good bill, pass it, right? And it gets pushed through. And you and I don't ever get to see what exactly went into this legislative making process. So I think, like many have said, that we need reform there in big ways, and we need to again have open debate, discourse about specific things on the floor. If a law isn't simple to understand and doesn't give you clear direction on what to do or what not to do or what you may do, then it's not a good law, and we need to ultimately, I think Congress needs to, I guess, push more and more back down to the state and local level. If they can't manage big things from the federal side, then perhaps they shouldn't be managing it whatsoever, and they should just focus on their constitutionally appointed responsibilities, namely to collect and raise taxes, to manage interstate commerce, and to declare war. So that's all I've got. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Michael Felker, would you support returning power to the party's leadership, or are you more sympathetic with those who want a more ideologically pure process in the chamber?
Well, I kind of want to piggyback off what Marlin said. So the Freedom Caucus is where I'm at. I would pledge my service to the Freedom Caucus, but we have to do some changes in the Freedom Caucus, especially with some of the members there. They're not doing what the core principles of the Freedom Caucus are supposed to be doing. But they're the ones who are out there, if you pay attention to the Freedom Caucus, are the ones who are out there educating the people on what's going on with these bills that are happening. You know, whether the speaker out there currently, we have Mike Johnson, is either suspending the rules, changing the way that we operate as a Republican Party, leadership-wise, as far as what they're wanting. For example, I'd almost take more spending right now if we could get an H.R. 2 passed that was back in May, kind of give and take a little bit if we can get our southern border fixed and get a functioning immigration system. We're doing things constantly through leadership that I believe it's just counterintuitive to what the American people want. I mean, look at what's going on right now with the southern border. I'll go back to it. 80% of the country, I would say, wholeheartedly want a functioning immigration system, right? Why have we not gotten it yet? And I'm going to go back and you'll hear me say it, and I'm going to beat this horse over and over again, guys, but we have got to get our power, our influence, and our leverage back from the politicians. And we can't execute, again, oversight if we're not educated on what's going on. So that's something I definitely want to change. I'm going to go back to that minibus that we were just talking about earlier, John was, that 1,012-page minibus. You know, we have a 72-hour rule in the House saying that we're going to give our members 72 hours to read that 1,000-page bill. Well, we gave ourselves 29 hours. And how did that happen? Our speaker said that Joe Biden was dragging his feet during the negotiation process, so that only gave us 29 hours to read a bill. That's 1.7 pages for 29 hours straight. Now, go back to what is a leader? A leader would have said, hey, look, it doesn't matter the negotiation process and how slow it went. We still have a rule, 72 hours, to pass this bill, so we're going to give our members adequate time to read the bill. This bill that we passed had major impact not only on the country, but in the district, in the state. So we've got to get back to a place, District 3, starting with us, where we're educated in all things government, what's going on, so we can understand what their job is, and so we can make some choices and some decisions on how our members of Congress govern.
Great, thank you. Tim Smith, would you support returning power to the party's leadership, or do you sympathize more with those who want an ideologically pure process in the chamber?
Yeah, I don't think of it as those who are ideologically pure and the establishment. I think of it as insiders and outsiders. One of the massive problems in DC is that people have been out there forever. When you run for Congress, you're actually invited to talk to some of these groups. And so I did. By the way, I've taken no money from any of them, and none of them have put any money behind me in this race yet. But while interviewing with one, I was literally asked, will you cede your vote? And I was dumbfounded. Mike just said, he'll be with the Freedom Caucus. I'm not ceding my vote to anybody. And that's what I told them. By the way, they were dangling hundreds of thousands of dollars to get me to cede my vote. Folks, that's what happens in Washington, D.C. This isn't a contest between those who are ideologically pure and the establishment. This is a contest between insiders and outsiders. The next check I will take from the government for services rendered will be the first. I've never been elected to anything. I think we need less politicians in DC and more independent thinking outsiders. I think we need more business people and less politicians. Business people understand you actually have to talk with one another to get stuff done. I was talking to somebody recently from DC who literally asked me, will you work with the Democrats? Again, I'm dumbfounded. Like, why wouldn't you try to work with any right-minded person on any right-minded issue where you agree? But that's the depths to which we've sunk in Washington, D.C. This isn't about supposedly pure versus insiders. This is about insider versus outsider. This is about knowing how to get stuff done, which we need business people in D.C. to get stuff done. I'll give you an example. In 2017, our tax bill included something called opportunity zones. My wife and I were able to invest in an opportunity zone and start a business which today employs 35 people who never would have been employed otherwise. Because the bill, supported across the board, because it makes sense, allowed us to invest and get some longer-term capital gains savings. And who benefited? 35 employees today, many of whom are probably unemployable. The local community where we buy our raw materials, paint and coloring and gravel and concrete, the businesses from which we bought our capital equipment, the landowners, the local city government and county government gets property taxes. This isn't about some false choice between the intellectually pure and the establishment. This is about insiders versus outsiders, politicians versus business people who know how to get things done. I'm going to Congress as an outside business person, very proud to be, because I actually want to get things done for the benefit of my grandkids and yours.
Okay, Eric Whalen, would you support returning power to the party's leadership, Or do you sympathize more that, with those that want an ideologically pure process in the chamber?
Well, I think there should be a degree of ideological purity. We do have the Constitution that's pretty specific about what the federal government should and should be doing. And as far as compromise goes, I won't compromise on legislation that's unconstitutional. I would be a no vote in every case. I don't care if party leadership came at me and tried to get my support. I don't care if the other side came at me. You know, whoever wins this office is going to take an oath to the Constitution, to swear and uphold it. And that should be the foundation, really. Now, the problem as I see it is the centralization of power. We are dealing with a vast centralization of power in DC, and that's where the corruption is born. But if we also were to centralize power, more power, into the House Speaker, you bet we're going to get more corruption there too. Now, House Speaker should have certain privileges and be able to facilitate movement within the conference. That's the function of the job, essentially. But we need to make sure that whoever we support for House Speaker is actually a good and honest person. You know, Mike Johnson has been terrible. In my opinion, he's been worse than Kevin McCarthy. And what Matt Gaetz and the others in the Freedom Caucus did to out McCarthy was great. Don't buy for 1 second that they're the ones creating the chaos in the Republican Party. This chaos, the so-called chaos the media is telling you is created, this needs to happen. This is actually proper debate. And we'd see the same thing on the House floor if we were to return to regular order. This is a good thing. It's healthy debate. I, a couple weeks ago, released a press release stating that I would support Representative Thomas Massie of Kentucky to be the next House Speaker. Now, why would I do that? Well, I believe you, the voters, deserve to hear from every one of us who we might put forward in that role. And looking at Mr. Thomas Massie's record, I believe it's quite clear that he is the most constitutional conservative, and he is fit for that role. So if you do have questions for some of us up here, I would be sure to ask, who would you plan on supporting for that role?
Okay, thank you. We're going to switch questions now. The federal budget deficit has many drivers and invites many policy suggestions. One is to change Social Security and other entitlement programs. The House Republican Study Committee has called for increasing the age for full Social Security benefits from 67 to 69, except for those now close to retirement, marginally trimming future benefits for all recipients, and providing some private sector competition for Medicare. Do you favor these proposals or others, such as increasing the maximum income levels for withholding? Or what are your ideas on this? I know it's a broad question, but we are going to start here with Marlin Stutzman.
Well, thank you. You know, I want to kind of follow up on what Tim mentioned, and I agree. It's going to take people that have run a business, that know how to balance a budget, that know how to bring people together, that are going to take things done. We don't need more lawyers in Washington. Look at what President Trump did when he went to North Korea and stood there facing Kim Jong-un face to face. That's how you avoid conflicts. You don't have to stay cocooned in the White House and look weak. You actually go straight into the enemy territory and you meet them and you show them that you're willing to come talk, but if they violate certain agreements, that there's going to be consequences. Putin would not have gone into Russia. Russia and Putin would not have gone into Ukraine if President Trump would be president today. There would not be the attack in Israel by Hamas that occurred on October 7th if President Trump were the president today. Because they know that when there's a leader in the White House who says there will be consequences if you do something wrong, they will follow up on it. All Joe Biden did was say, don't. Well, now they did. So now what's going to happen? Again, this comes, too often Washington reacts to the failed leadership and tries to fix the failed leadership, the consequences of failed leadership. And it's the same situation with our budget and with, in particular, the entitlement programs. Social Security and Medicare are the two largest programs that the federal government has. We as Republicans, when I was in Congress back in 2014-15 roughly, we propose to make those changes then. Let's say we'll keep the promises and the commitments to those who are 55 at that time, and then we will make adjustments for those who are younger than that. Well, nothing happened. We couldn't find any honest brokers on the other side of the aisle, and Republicans were the ones that were willing to make those choices and make those difficult choices. George W. Bush was also one who was willing to make those difficult choices and at least have the dialogue. Unfortunately, the Democrats don't even want to have that discussion. I started my own IRA when I was 18 years old because I don't believe that Social Security is going to be there when I do retire. And I think that with the $35 trillion in debt that we have and the continual spending in Washington, things are going to come to a crash sooner than later. And that's why I believe we need strong business people, not more lawyers in Washington who are going to just try to find a way to kick the can down the road. We need business people there who are going to fix the problem.
Okay, thank you. Michael Felker, again, would you support the Republican Study Committee to increase age, trim benefits, provide private sector competition in Medicare, increase income levels for withholding, or what is your notion on this?
Well, thank you. Yeah, so I want to go back to like when George Bush was talking about, because, you know, I don't know how many working class people are sitting in this room right now, but we've worked very hard for the 6.2% of our pay that the government that we put in, and that money should be there for us. I'm definitely for taking my money right now and running straight to the bank with it and investing it how I see fit, because I can do a better job clearly than what the federal government's been doing. I mean, we're talking $1.5 trillion is the number one appropriations right now in the bill, and every budget right now. So Social Security, which they keep calling an entitlement program, is the number one budgeted item in the Congress. And I have a hard time wrapping my head around that, because that money should be put aside every time somebody puts some money in there. Your company obviously puts another 6.2% in there. So for people that don't know, you're talking 12.4% of that money should be going in account for you. And I read an article a number of years ago. I'm going to say, I don't remember exactly how many presidents back, but it was probably prior to the Carter administration, that every president has been borrowing from that. And I'm sure they're getting congressional approval to do that. Again, we've got to get to a point, America, where we understand that we all know that, for example, Social Security is going to have a shortfall, which means more money is coming out than going in here in 2033. Medicare, I believe that's going to happen in 2030. So we've got some serious decisions to make. It's not going to be what Mike Felker wants. It's going to be what the district and the people of this country want. We've got to figure out a plan ourselves. That's why we'll say quarterly town halls, because we've got some serious issues, because everything that we're talking about today is all rhetoric unless it all gets fixed. We've all heard the same talking points. We have the same problems, America, that we've had for the last 25, 30 years, and none of them are getting fixed. And here we are, I'm 57, almost 58 years old, and I'm still hearing the same problems that I had when I was a kid. And the solution clearly is the people of this country and the people of this district. So we've got to figure out what we're going to do with Social Security. If you put into it, I believe every penny should be brought back to your pocket, and we got to do something to shore up the future generations, whether that be privatizing it somehow, but that's going to have to be from the people of this country.
Thank you. Tim Smith, again, increase the age, trim benefits, private sector competition in Medicare, or increasing levels of income, or what your idea is.
Yeah, in any financial transaction, there's debits and credits. You can either increase revenue, you can cut expenses. Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill were the last people to overhaul Social Security. I know that because I remember watching the McNeil-Lehrer NewsHour with my dad when I was in early high school. I think it was around '83. And I remember the reporter saying that the benefits for those retiring in 2035 were going to be reduced by virtue of the retirement age increasing. And it hit me, and I'll never forget telling my dad, I think my retirement age is 2035. I think I just lost benefits. Think about that. It's the early 80s, and Ronald Reagan, one of the most conservative presidents, and Tip O'Neill, one of the most liberal Democrats, found a way to come together and get this done. Not by increasing taxes, but by changing the benefits of people 50 years later. Social Security and Medicare are contracts that the federal government has made with taxpayers. We don't violate contracts. I disagree that we should reduce benefits for people over 55, as Marlin just said.
No, I
Maybe-
wasn't saying that. I didn't say that.
Oh, I thought that's what you supported. I'm
No,
sorry.
no.
I'm sorry. Look, for the people who haven't paid in yet, let's have that conversation. The government doesn't need more money for anything. The government doesn't have a revenue problem. The government has a spending problem. And it's true for entitlements, and it's true for everything else. Yes, we need to fix it. The worst thing we can do for our kids and grandkids and yours is not fix it. Obviously, we have to fix it. We need to do it like Reagan and O'Neill did it by changing the contract terms 50 years from now. What do we do in the interim? How do we get the fiscal house in order? It's simple. We start off by cutting waste. In this omnibus, minibus, all these acronyms that Congress comes up with that we normal people don't understand, in this recent spending spree that just got shoved down our throats, we spent $200 million on gender equity, if you didn't know that. We spent $2 million giving it to an Oregon medical facility to do gender transition surgeries. We spent $800,000 to help trans men who haven't had surgery not appear as men. Look, we can disagree about those policies from a social perspective, but I am adamantly opposed to those kinds of taxpayer expenditures. We must fix Social Security and Medicare. We need to do so by changing the terms of future taxpayers and not violating the contracts of those of us who've been paying in our entire lives. And we need to start by eliminating waste in DC, which politicians can't find a way to do.
Okay, thanks again. And just to be clear, the Republican Study Committee did call for cutting those, not cutting for people close. So I just, to be clear on that, I'm sorry if it was
Yeah, it was generally 55 and above would not see any changes. That age may have
Right.
shifted one way or the other.
But if people from 21 or 16 to 55 who have been paying in under these current terms have their benefits cut, I don't think that's right.
What you have to do is you have to give people time to make changes for their own retirement plans.
Marlin, as
We're gonna
long
let-
as they get
Wait,
back.
can we get
We're gonna-
back to?
We're gonna,
yeah.
we're
Thank
gonna
you.
let Wendy Davis has the next one, and we're gonna, again, what do you think about increasing the age for those not close, trimming future benefits, and private sector competition in Medicare, or increasing maximum levels for the withholding income levels, or your own idea? So we'll start again. Wendy Davis, thank you.
So I'm running to bring back a strong America, and a strong America is one that keeps its promises to Hoosier families and elderly people that have paid into a system. But in order to have a strong federal budget that we can keep our promises in America to pay those that are currently on Social Security, we need to stop spending, needless spending. We also need to make sure, I think part of the question was, would I support a study committee? I would support any study committee that's gonna come up with a way to decrease all of this needless spending and balance our budget, so again, we can keep our promises to those that are elderly. I am 100% always in favor of any private sector competition. I mean, I'm for free markets, free competition. I think when it comes to healthcare as well, we need no government healthcare. We need Obamacare is just absolutely needs to be abolished altogether. But I think anytime there's private sector competition, I think that's a good thing in America. That's how we were created. So my point on all of this is, we've got a lot of failed career politicians in Washington right now that are not addressing this. But the biggest thing we need to do, as a circuit court judge, I had 7 budgets I had to balance, and the taxpayers expected me to balance those budgets. We need to make sure our Congress is balancing that budget as well, so that we can again ensure that what the government was set up to do and you paid into it, you have those benefits. I just want to clarify too on national school choice. I don't think there should be more government in our education. That's not what I meant. When I say national school choice, abolish the Department of Education, but I want every single parent in the nation to put their kids in a school system that they want to put them in. It's the parents' choice, or homeschool at home. However you want it, I think nationally we should allow parents to decide where their kids go.
Okay, thank you. Eric Whalen, again, would you support increasing the age for Social Security for those not close, marginally trimming future benefits, private sector competition in Medicare, increasing the maximum level for withholding, or your own idea?
No, I wouldn't support really any changes other than just outright ending it and writing checks to everyone who's already paid in. You know, there's a reason that you won't find in the Constitution, a funding program for retirement or to fund medical aid for individuals throughout the country. There's a reason that's not in the Constitution, because it will lead to the problems that we've been dealing with for decades, and we're kind of bickering about how we're going to solve those, trying to find waste and fraud. Well, we've been trying to do that for a long time. That's not going to be a solution to this problem. There really is no solution other than outright ending it and paying back with interest, adjusted for inflation, everybody back who's already paid in. That's really the only solution here. Sending a business owner to DC to solve these problems sounds good, but there are corrupt business owners out there too. We need someone who will actually speak the truth on these issues and not repeat the talking points that have been said pretty much every election cycle that I can remember. Some of the same things that I'm hearing up on stage tonight have been being said year after year from politicians, and this problem's not going anywhere. It's not gonna go anywhere. They're gonna keep talking about it because it's a great thing to campaign on, but it just flat out needs to end. This is something that actually the states can do if they want to. All the powers not delegated to the central government go right back to the states where they belonged all along. So if the states want to fund medical aid programs or retirement programs, they can do that. But at the federal level, no, it just needs to stop.
Okay, thank you. John Kenworthy, again, do you support increasing the age for Social Security benefits for those not close, trimming future benefits, private sector competition in Medicare, increase income levels for withholding, or your own view?
So to be clear, these are sort of the third rail of politics type questions. And I think it's important to know where each of us stand on these issues. But oftentimes we get wrapped up in things that likely aren't going to change. So just to put that out there first, that's why the things that I want to work on to fix this budget are things that are possible and likely to happen, which is why I will try and get on the Armed Services Committee, because that's 60% of our discretionary budget, where you can have a meaningful impact on our debt and deficit. But going back to the specific question, Social Security, both my parents are on Social Security now. My mom's 76, my dad's 81, so this is something that's personal to me because it affects my family. And I will say that for anybody currently receiving or that has paid in, they made a contract that they were forced into, and we should honor that contract. Any changes that we make for the future, anybody that put a single penny in should be either given the optional choice to remove themselves from the program, or if they choose to stay, we should honor their commitment. We should honor that contract, and they should be grandfathered in. We should not be cutting benefits or changing the age on somebody that's already been part of the program without their consent. On Medicare, that discussion, I do believe very strongly in the free market. I think that the free market is always the best answer, but we have to have a well-regulated free market. And I've seen what happens when we go too far in one direction. I just saw that with the VA. As a veteran myself, having health care from the VA, but also working with veterans and doing casework with veterans and seeing what happens when we go too far to one side. We need that free market competition. We need that private sector competition, just like we need it in the VA, and they introduced a choice program. I think we need choice programs for Medicare as well. But we need to be careful, because sometimes choice isn't choice. Look at everything we were promised with Obamacare. keep your own doctor, keep your own plan. And some of these big insurance companies that are private, part of the free market, were advocating for Obamacare because they knew they were going to make bank off of it. They knew that the regulations would be set in a way to benefit them, not to help the country, not to serve their customers. So we need a comprehensive plan, no matter whether we're talking about Social Security or Medicare. We need something that looks at all angles of the problem and protects anybody currently depending on those benefits.
Okay, finally, Grant Bucher, your view on increasing the age for Social Security for those not close, marginally trimming benefits for everyone, private sector's competition in Medicare, or increasing the maximum income levels for withholding, or your own views.
So as I look out into the crowd today, I see a lot of faces that this discussion is going to impact greatly. But two one that I'm looking at in particular, one is sleeping right now. It's Gentry, and Grayson's there too, and I don't think they understand quite yet the impact that this discussion is going to have on their futures. And so I, as a father and as a representative of you and servant of you, feel that it is my responsibility to address these issues once and for all. I think that it's critically important that we don't fix this problem 80% of the way, 90% of the way. We got to fix it 100% of the way, or we've just kicked the can down the road and affected their children as well. With all things that government gets its hands into, it does them poorly. And so I think that this Social Security system that was set up years ago and was never intended to last into eternity, it needs to be done away with. I think that you can do things incrementally and have an off-ramp for them, but I think that it needs to be clearly set up that there is an exit for the United States citizens to get away from a government-directed investment program. If you and I took the 6% that goes from our check to DC every week or every other week, and our companies took that same 6%, and we put it into the open markets, we would have a healthy retirement when we got done, because the open market does things so much better than a government entity is ever going to do. Tim, as you shared, we had a plan for getting this resolved back in the 80s, and less than 12 years later, Bill Clinton started borrowing from it so that we had a first surplus in a long time. And I think that if we try to address it marginally without doing away with it in the end, that we get it addressed today, but a decade from now, somebody else is going to tank it again. So I think it's critically important that we look at all of our options, but have an exit ramp to get out of the investment business as a federal government.
Great, thank you. Okay, we're going to shift to another question here. In polling, the border is the most important issue for voters. Meanwhile, half of the labor force growth last year came from immigration. In your view, how can we balance dealing with illegal immigration policy, international law and refugee policy, and the benefits to the labor force from legal immigration labor for in what you would view as comprehensive immigration reform? We begin with Wendy Davis.
Right, so I'm running to bring back a strong America. A strong America means strong borders and a strong immigration system. When I practiced law prior to taking to the bench, I represented a lot of agriculture business around the 3rd District. Maple Leaf Farms, one of the largest duck producers, and some others, and they use migrant workers. I agree that we need legal migrant workers coming in here. It was easy. It wasn't easy, but we were able to make sure that all of these migrant workers that want to work in agriculture were here legally and it could be done. Fast forward to my courtroom, now I don't know what Biden has done, but there's no immigration system here. There's no ICE officers to come pick up the criminals that are committing these crimes here. So what we need to do once we close our borders, deport the illegals and the criminals that are here, we need to put into place, once again, our immigration system. I'm all about an immigration system. We are a country founded on immigration, but right now it's out of control. I want to go back to, if we need migrants to come over and work, there's a way to do that. They come in the front door, they don't come through the border, they go through the immigration system and get their work visas, and then they go back. But we right now, the way America is running, Joe Biden has hurt our immigration system. There is no immigration system. Like I said, I was so frustrated as a judge. I had a gal standing in front of me telling me how she came from Mexico here to Northeast Indiana with a fake social security number and how she tried to get legal for over a year, but there was nobody here to help her, no immigration system. So it is a really broken system right now, but it is a system. And I think in America, once we close our borders, deport all of these illegals that we're paying for, I've got 2 in uniform. When I ran a veterans court, I could not get services for my veterans struggling. I had a veteran pulled out of Afghanistan here homeless in Northeast Indiana hooked on fentanyl. I could not get him services. Our federal government's supposed to give services because why? We're giving all of our money to these illegals, giving them cards, doing things. So my stance on this is that we've got to close the border, send back those that are here illegally, and we got to put back into place the legal immigration system that is here and that I have worked with. And by the way, our amnesty laws need to be reformed.
Thank you. Grant Bucher, again, for comprehensive immigration reform, how do you balance dealing with illegal immigration, refugee policy and international law, and the benefits of legal immigration to the labor force?
Thank you. So I work in the construction industry, as I've shared with many of you. I manage about $65 million worth of projects, and on those projects, I have a number of jobs that people simply do not want to do. And for those, we rely on individuals coming from other nations who are just seeking a better opportunity to provide for their families and have a better life in general. So the United States needs immigration, but it needs to be legally and with assimilation. As we bring people into our nation, they need to recognize that now they are American and live accordingly. By all means, bring your delicious food. I want to try it, but we need to have America First mentality across the board with all of our individuals. What would my approach to this be? I think that number one, we do need to finish the wall and make sure that we stop the bleeding, and as Pascal would say, law without force is impotent. So I think that in order to stop the crisis that we've got, the American government needs to apply force, and I'm grateful for the governors who have been sending their troops down to the border to help support Texas, even while the president's office does not do the same. So with that, we need to then put a full moratorium on immigration. So in the construction industry, whenever we get a problem, or in the manufacturing plants that I've worked in, when we've got a problem, we don't continue operating with the problem. We shut the plant down and we address the issue and then open it back up again. If we put a full moratorium on immigration instead of just allowing it to limp along, maybe then we could have the true interest of the people in Washington and the true interest of the public to jump on board, get all hands on deck, and figure out what needs to take place to resolve the immigration problems that we've got. We've been talking about them for years, and it never seems to get out beyond an election year, right? It seems like immigration continues to perpetuate, and we need to take it serious once and for all, and make it more accessible for people who want to become part of America to get here, particularly if they possess certain skills or certifications that we need as a nation. And yeah, there's a whole lot of work to be done, but I look forward to the opportunity to working with others to help see it through. Thanks.
Thank you. Tim Smith, for comprehensive immigration reform, how do we balance illegal immigration, international law, and refugee policy, and the benefits to the labor force from legal immigration?
I'll get to the benefits and maybe how to balance at the end. I think the border issue conceptually is actually pretty straightforward. Finish the wall instead of what Biden did, which was auction off parts that Trump literally had purchased and lying next to the wall to be used. Enforce the laws. Number one, finish the wall. 2, enforce the laws. I mentioned that I own a business. If I hire an illegal, it's a $50,000 fine. Let's just enforce the laws. And thirdly, let's overhaul the laws. And I'll give you 6 specifics. Sanctuary cities are part of the problem. For years, we've been hearing how the liberal sanctuary cities wanted to welcome all the immigrants until the governors of Texas and Florida started giving them what they ask for. If you're a sanctuary city, you get no more federal funds, period. Not for education, not for transportation and roads, period. If you're a sanctuary city, you're done. Number two, I think we should have national citizenship voting requirements. I don't think it's a mystery why Biden wants an open border. I think he's looking for a bunch of Democratic votes. If the Democrats flip Texas, which naturally is getting more border crossers than anywhere, it's going to be really hard for Republicans to win the White House ever again. National citizenship voting requirements. Number three, I think we should end birthright citizenship. Just because you're here and you have a child doesn't mean the child should be a citizen, unless certain things are in place. Parental citizenship, otherwise complying with our immigration laws, etc. I think we need 10,000 more ICE agents. I would deputize every local police officer in America, state, federal, county, city, as if they were border and customs agents, and allow them to identify, arrest, and send home illegals. This is what we need to do to overhaul our immigration laws. One, finish the wall. Two, enforce existing law. Three, overhaul the law. So to the heart of the question, we allow California fruit and vegetable farmers to have seasonal visas. It's been that way for decades. They're allowed to come in and help plant and then help harvest and then they go back. I've toured a bunch of dairy farms in Northeast Indiana. That law doesn't apply to them. You know why? Because cows need milked 3 times a day, 365 days a year. Again, a business person approaches these things commonsensically, not in a partisan way. What we need are outsiders with business acumen to solve these problems. Solutions exist. We just need business people who think independently to solve them. The dairy farmer should be treated the same as the California fruit and vegetable farmer. Yes, we need workers. We have 10 million open jobs in America right now. But we have to approach it rationally, which we haven't done in the past because politicians bicker.
Okay, thank you. Marlin Stutzman, again on comprehensive immigration reform. How do we balance illegal immigration, international law and refugee policy, and benefits to the labor force from legal immigration?
Yeah, so my policy has always been very simple: a high wall and a wide gate. We have to finish the wall. I appreciate Tim's comments, and I would agree that there are solutions that we have to carry out, but the wall has to be finished. I visited the wall a couple of months ago down in Yuma, Arizona, and just saw the travesty and the humanitarian crisis that was at the border wall. It's ironically, as Tim mentioned too, this is a political issue, unfortunately, for the Democrats, because they finished the wall in California, and they have not finished the wall in Arizona, and of course, many were coming in across the Texas border. Well, Texas finally took the matters into their own hands and have closed off greater parts of the border, and now folks are now immigrating illegally into New Mexico. This is a political issue for the Democrats because, as Tim mentioned, if they can switch Texas to be a Democrat state, presidential politics will go to the Democrats for years to come. I believe that, so I grew up on a farm. I grew up in the seed corn fields. I would detassel corn. I would walk the corn rows as a very young boy. That was my baseball card money, and my mom taught me how to enjoy that. But it is hard work, and I also know that it taught me that I wanted to do something different than to walk cornfields. It's an opportunity for our young people to take jobs like that. It's also, with a growing economy, there's going to be demand for more workers. So why do I say a high wall and a wide gate? Well, you have to seal the border. You can't have people coming across illegally. We don't know who they are. We don't know if their intentions are criminal. We don't know if their intentions are to be here and to provide a better way of life for their families. Well, let's have a government, or have our system work that they come through the proper channels. We know who's coming through. With over 7 million people that have crossed the border, we don't know who they are. That's why this is such a serious issue, because we don't know if they are here to eventually hurt us as Americans. We don't know if they're here Maybe they're, of course, drug trafficking, human trafficking, all of those are problems at the border. We have to control the border. This is a very simple solution. We have to finish the wall. Once the wall is finished, let's have port of entries that work where people can come across and properly, and we know who they are. And I would agree with Tim, we should never allow anybody who came here illegally to ever have the opportunity to vote. I think that is something that they have forfeited, and let's take the politics out of immigration and all agree on that one.
Okay, thank you. John Kenworthy, in comprehensive immigration reform, how do you balance dealing with illegal immigration, international law and refugee policy, and the benefits to the labor force from legal immigration?
Thank you. Yes, this is a very important question for me, and it's one where I bring a unique perspective. Not only do I have professional experience on this issue, advising Senator Braun for 4 years on the Department of Homeland Security and the State Department, so covering both the border and the legal ramifications and asylees, but also I have personal experience with this. My wife, who's with me here today, is an immigrant from Germany, and she came over 16 years ago. I met her while I was stationed over in the Army, and I sponsored her green card. And it's important that we understand the value that legal immigrants bring. We need to be accepting of those folks and welcoming them in because they are a great value, not just for our businesses, but for our society, because they do it the right way. But if you're not willing to do it the right way, you shouldn't be coming here, period. So there's a lot of points on this, and I find it interesting. Marlin mentioned this is a political issue for the Democrats, but this is a political issue for the Republicans too. Just a couple months ago, President Trump was trying to kill a deal that would have helped secure the border. And since then, some of my opponents have suddenly come to the realization that maybe we do need to change the laws, where back then we just needed to secure the border. That was it. But the reality is we have to secure the border. That's the number one piece, because there we're seeing not just illegal immigrants come in, but smuggling and sex trafficking. We need to defund sanctuary cities and get rid of the incentive for people to come. We do need to keep people from voting if they come here illegally. We also need to tackle Mexico. Mexico, our southern neighbor, is running a $130 billion trade deficit with us, and we're still giving them foreign aid in hopes that they'll help with cartels and help with this problem, and they haven't. We need to replace remain in Mexico with remain in place. They can't be coming from Canada or anywhere else. They need to stay there. We have to take away the power of the presidency to choose how many asylees come in. Congress should have to approve that each year. So he can't change his mind from 10,000 to 1 million, depending on who's in the office. And, Tim, you said end birthright citizenship. Well, that includes people that are related. I hope you know that. I think what you meant is end just soli, which is end birthplace citizenship, which would stop anchor babies. If my son is related to me by blood, I think he should be a citizen. So I think that's what you meant. I would go with that. We also need to tackle visa overstays, because the fact is 40 to 50% of the people that come here illegally, they come on a passport or on a work visa, and they overstay, and they're here just as illegally as the person that came across the Rio Grande. And finally, we need harsher laws. First time offense for coming across, the penalty can be as low as a $50 fine. I've got parking tickets higher than that. We need to fix these laws.
Okay, thanks. We're going to, before we go to Eric and Michael, we're going to have questions from the audience, again, not associated with the campaign or a family member. So if you want to start thinking about your question, and there's a mic here and a mic there, I just want to be ready so we can go there first. But first, Eric Whalen, again, how do we approach comprehensive immigration reform? How do we deal with illegal immigration, international law and refugee policy, and the labor force benefits from legal immigration?
Sure, it's a great question.
Thank you.
Very interesting. International law, I really couldn't care less about international law. We have the Constitution, and that is the law of our land. A lot of people don't know this and think that the federal government should be handling immigration. If you actually open up to read the Constitution, immigration is not an issue they should be dealing with. Naturalization is, and that's different. But immigration is left to the states. And the framers of the Constitution were very smart in not putting that in there, because it's the states who can determine, who should determine how many immigrants they should accept and on what conditions and under what circumstances. You know, again, we don't need one-size-fits-all policy from DC. They don't know. That's why the issue is politicized between the Democrats and the Republicans. They're trying to solve this complex issue when in reality, we should have 50 solutions. The states need to be deciding that. But we do need to end the federal welfare programs that are forcing a lot of these immigrants to go into low-skilled, low-paying jobs. You know, some of these jobs could be filled here. And if we ended a lot of the federal welfare programs, I think a lot of those jobs could be filled. We also need to quit funding NGOs and non-government organizations who are facilitating illegal immigration. And that can be done before we build a wall. Because let's be honest, we've been talking about building a wall for quite a while. And I just don't, as much as it could and should be part of the solution, there's other things that we can be doing immediately by cutting the funding of these non-government organizations who are wanting to bring these illegals in and cause this sort of chaos. But this is a state issue, and we don't need to deputize 1,000 or 10,000 federal agents. That is ridiculous. We've got a bloated, bureaucratic state. We're not going to solve these issues by adding to it. A one-size-fits-all policy does not work. Again, because of the many differences that we find from state to state. And ultimately, what we end up with, the American people, what we end up with is more corruption and more tyranny. And that's what we're facing right now. We need to decentralize these issues and bring them back to the states to solve.
Okay, thank you. Michael Felker, again, with comprehensive immigration reform, how can we balance illegal immigration, international law and refugee policy, and the benefits from the labor force from legal immigration?
Well, the country had Ellis Island back in 1892 to 1954. They processed 12 million people through Ellis Island. Why in God's name do we not have a modern-day Ellis Island somewhere on the border to make it simple, easy for people to come through the port of entry? I definitely want to agree with everything Eric said. I believe the states need to be kicking it back, and they need to be in charge of it, but right now, that's not going to happen. Some of the other things that I believe that we can control was what John said. We have to kind of put some pressure on Mexico. I mean, we're giving them $68 million last year is what we gave them in foreign aid, from what I'm seeing. And so I don't know why we're giving them $68 million when they're allowing the whole world to come through their port of entry, come straight through their country and right up to the United States. And of course, we've got the drugs and all that getting trafficked. I see a lot of people are getting excited because they're sending the National Guard down to the border, and Texas is kind of getting tough. But I can tell you, as a member of the Indiana Army National Guard, I served 20 years, and I know many people who've served on the border under the Bush and Trump administration. It's a joke. They're not going down there to do anything. It's all publicity. They're going down there. They have no rules of engagement. They have no authority whatsoever. Maybe now a little bit. Governor Abbott has allowed some of the National Guard members to actually maybe detain some people, but you know what they're doing with them is they're kicking them to CPB once they detain them. And everybody understands what happens after that process. They process these illegals, they give them money, they tell them wherever they want to go, they give them a plane ticket anywhere on the lower 48. And the problem is never going to be fixed unless we change the policy. So it's going to have to come from you, again, the people of this country. My first job that I did when I was 13 years of age, and I did it for 4 years, I detasseled. And most of the people that I worked for Pioneer Seaco when we were out there in the fields in northern Indiana were not, they didn't look like me. They were all from all over this country, typically Mexico. But we've got to do some things differently. And again, here we are, 2024, and we're talking about the number one issue in America right now, which is immigration, illegal immigration. And we still haven't managed to be able to grasp it. I know we look at ourselves and we tell everybody, you hear the sound bites over and over again, how great the United States is. We're the best country on the planet, and we are. But we can't seem to solve the issues that the people are asking the politicians to solve. So we've got to get back to work, America. That's my spiel, what I want to do. I want to get you back involved. I've said it several times now, but that is the only solution. All you have to do is look at history, and we can take a good note that 435 members have not gotten the job done.
Any questions here?
Yeah, a couple of years ago, there was a Republican, the only Republican running for state senator. I heard him debate the Democrat, and he had not one answer. As I listen to you on these questions, you're in a friendly environment here. But I wondered, like my brother, a staunch Democrat, a liberal, in terms of, say, the issue on welfare and healthcare system especially. He looks at Europe as this great solution where they can provide health care for everyone, and we should be doing the same. Our industry should be able to take care of this and all of that. I don't know if it's that issue. To me, the main issue that this man that I was, this Republican was not answering was on the issue of abortion. And the Democrat was saying that before Roe versus Wade was overturned, the norm was abortion on demand. And so now you've changed it all, and you're ruining our society, and all of these things that the Democrat was complaining about. But he never once said anything about how the fundamental knowledge of when life begins, never said anything about previous to Roe versus Wade, the norm was a conservative one. He never had one answer to this Democrat. And I thought, how did the Republicans ever get this guy to run for office? He doesn't believe anything that conservatives do. So I'm wondering, and I don't know how to ask the question, can you answer the opposition?
Okay, we're going to take both questions and go, if that's okay. I've got it written down, I think. Go ahead.
One of the most important comments I heard was from Mr. Felker about quarterly town halls and an educated citizenry. All of you have emphasized your constituents, yet one of the most frustrating things I've encountered in calling my representatives, which I do a lot, is getting information. What I hear is, I'll forward your concerns. I tell them they aren't needed, just have a recorder there. What are you going to do to communicate with us and educate us? I think it's absolutely critical. Secondly, term limits. How is it not the answer to 50 to 90% of the problems?
Okay, we're going to take this last question, if that's okay. We're just really up against the time. You can come forward, sir, if you guys don't mind staying. Are we killing you up here, ACPL? Okay, go ahead.
Are we ready?
Let's answer these two and then you guys can go. But 60 seconds, if that's all right. We got it. So we're going to start with Michael Felker. The question was first, how do you answer Democrats on issues like welfare and abortion and when life starts? And secondly, how do you plan to have communication with your constituents to more clearly educate them and term limits? Michael.
Yeah, so real briefly, okay, let's try to get this in 60 seconds. So,
Sorry.
yeah, we've got an opposition, but again, we've got to be able to communicate too with the other party. You know, talking about abortion real quick, I saw a thing the other day. The guy was going around campus and asking people to sign to save the eagle eggs, and if people would sign to support the eagle eggs, and everybody would sign for it. And then he'd turn around and ask them, "Would you sign also this pledge to save the children in the womb?" And people were apprehensive to sign that pledge. and it made me think quite a bit about the society that we live in. I mean, we've got some serious problems in our society, but again, where do these people and these thoughts and ideas come from? Well, they come from American families. But yeah, I'm not a politician. I'm not going to give you a political answer, but we've got to change some things, obviously, and it's going to start with you. Back to the second question regarding town halls and stuff. That's what I've said. That's the only thing that I truly believe is going to solve our problems. We've got to get the people educated in all things government, and we've got to be able to execute oversight. Again, if you go back to some of the things that the founders said, you know, is it a republic? And if it is, can you keep it? So we've got to get back to the founding fathers, what they've said, and the Constitution.
Okay, thanks. We're going backward in order that we just did. So John Kenworthy, again, how do you answer Democrats' welfare abortion, as well as how do you communicate with your constituents to educate them and term limits?
So the first thing I would say is that, and especially once you go to Congress, you have to work with the other side. But the key is to make sure that your morals are intact, the issues that are most important you don't compromise on. But that doesn't mean you don't listen to the other side, because it's important to understand where they're coming from. We talk about abortion. I'm 100% pro-life, but that also means that I should listen to the other side and understand that there are women that are suffering and having hard choices with their pregnancies that we need to support, that poverty is causing more and more single parent households. Also, that we need to not demonize women. So there are ways to understand more with educating voters. I will always tell you how I'm going to vote and why, because that's the most important thing. You don't want a form letter from me just saying, this bill's in another committee that I'm not on, and I'm not interested in giving you details. Transparency is very important, and I will always give you as much details as I can in the time limited.
Thank you. Eric Whalen, again, how do you answer the other side, welfare abortion, and also how do you communicate with your constituents and term limits?
Sure. Well, we have to be an opposition party. The GOP, the Republican Party, has compromised for far too long. That's why we have the term uniparty. The Republican Party, especially in DC, they compromise on just about every issue because they think the federal government should be solving these things. But in reality, most of these issues should be solved at the state level. So this is critical, I think. As far as the moral decline too, this is a result of big government stepping in where it has no place to step in. So a lot of these societal problems we have as a result of big government. Term limits, I'm not sold on term limits because I think there's a few problems that come in with term limits. I never signed the pledge and I'm not going to because, what happens when these representatives know they're going out of term and they're not going to be elected the next go-around? What kind of compromises are these people going to make? Not having to come back to the district and answer to us? We already know they're not willing to compromise, so I think it sets them up for failure, and it's kind of an impossibility too, because you're asking the federal government to limit their own power in that regard. I just don't see it really being a solution.
Great. Okay, Grant, go ahead. Again, we're talking about how do you answer the liberals on welfare and abortion, and how do you can communicate and educate your constituents as well as term limits?
Yeah, so when it comes to talking to the other side, I think fundamentally we are at a place in our society where we're not just talking about policy differences, but we're talking about worldview differences. And so I think it's critically important as we discuss with others that we draw out the fact that we disagree on the way the world is ordered. Mine is dictated by what I believe is biblically true and what I believe is true about Jesus Christ being on the throne of the universe. And I think that we need to bring others up to speed on that element and debate rationally with truth and love. And that is how I've had an opportunity to start to change hearts even in this campaign. It's been a wonderful opportunity. Switching over to talking about term limits, I would vote in favor of term limits. It's one of the very few things in the Constitution that I differ from. I think that it's critically important that we do limit the power and the possibility for corruption just by limiting people's exposure duration to it. And how would I maintain my accountability to you? I think it's important that we continue to communicate effectively with you. Like they mentioned before, I'd like to communicate how I'm going to vote and why, or how I voted and why. And last thing, I set up 4 people to watch my life from different angles and maintain accountability for me. If I stray from this role and it begins to be about me, then they've got permission to pull the plug on my campaign. Thanks.
Okay. Wendy Davis, again, how do you communicate with the other side on welfare and life issue, et cetera? And how do you communicate and educate the constituency in your position on term limits?
So I am running to bring back a strong America, and I will stand with President Trump and have a strong conservative voice against the opposition and against the liberals that are destroying our country. So that's how I would approach the opposition. As far as welfare and abortion, I saw the welfare system abused in my courtroom every single day. We are giving free handouts as the federal government to so many who don't deserve it. Social Security being abused as well. I had a guy tell me he hadn't worked in 3 years because everybody in his family was on Social Security. So again, strong opposition against the liberals to ensure we decrease that and put some parameters around it. As far as abortion, the Dobbs decision has come down. I am unapologetically pro-life, and I would oppose the liberal agenda where they want to put legislation on the floor right now to abort a baby up until the date that it is born at taxpayer expense. I will oppose that. And as how will I represent you? When I come back to the district, I will have quarterly meetings, whether it's in agriculture, whether it's with you, to hear your voice, because as your next Congresswoman, I represent your voice in Congress.
Great, thank you. Tim Smith, again, how do you communicate with the other side on issues like welfare and abortion, as well as how do you educate your constituents and your views on term limits?
Yeah, I'm unashamedly pro-life, been endorsed by the Northeast Indiana Right to Life, the Indiana Right to Life. I'll come back to welfare in a moment. Communicating with constituents is actually way easier than it used to be. We should just be using virtual tools. I think we need FaceTime, live FaceTime. I don't mean the Apple FaceTime, but literally FaceTime virtually with our elected officials. I intend to do that on a regular weekly basis. I'm also not gonna move out to Washington, D.C. I'm flying back and forth because I live in Northeast Indiana, and I will be in touch with voters in Northeast Indiana. Welfare. The Farm Bill, related to welfare, is 80% SNAP, which is a food welfare program. So the Farm Bill was about $100 billion a year between 2018 and 2023. About 20 of that went to farmers, and $80 billion a year went to this food welfare program, which does not have a workfare component. Here's the welfare solution. You get a job, you pass drug tests, and you do other things that are required of people who work for a wage. That's how I would handle welfare.
Thank you. Marlin Stutzman, again, how do you answer or communicate with liberals on welfare, abortion, life issue? And how do you educate your constituency as well as term limits?
Yeah, I'm going to address the communication first, and I appreciate the question. That was something that we took a lot of pride in our office. We had some great staff here in the district, and we not only did town halls, but because sometimes people don't want to ask a question in a setting like this, we did one-on-ones. I actually had people come directly to my office, and we would spend one-on-one time, 3 to 5 minutes addressing particular needs and have staff there to make sure that we did any follow-up. I would also say that a handwritten letter is the most effective communication tool. When I would see a handwritten letter on my desk, I would always make sure I read that. Phone calls are great, but oftentimes staff are just writing the number down and passing it on to the member. As far as abortion, unfortunately, this is the dividing issue between the Republican Party and the Democrat Party. I had a friend on the Democrat side who was pro-life, and they beat him specifically on that issue because he was pro-life, and the Democrat Party has been taken over by the abortion industry. I believe that life begins at conception, and life is a gift from God. Term limits, it is, I think, a big part of the answer to the question. We have to have term limits. Unfortunately, dark money has now come into our campaigns. We've seen it in this one, where people that are billionaires are sending mailers into this district that don't live here for other candidates that are twisting the truth and saying lies, and I don't believe that's what is a healthy debate for our campaigns. Term limits, it should be, and it is a must.
Thanks. Okay. Do we have another question, or are we going to go ahead, grab the mic real quick. We got to be very fast. We're going to take shotguns on both of these.
Okay. I would like to know how your plan to go to Congress and create some kind of unity among the Republican Party because it's kind of a wreck right now. And I do have opinions on the abortion issue, but I think it's a narrative that Republicans need to reach out to and get ahead of instead of run from it. And I would like to know how you plan to reach out to the urban communities where a huge percentage of the vote is coming from. That would be it. Women's rights as well.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
I guess maybe this will follow up a little bit with the unity. You know, doing what is right is seldom easy. What I would like to know is, will each of you have the courage and moral fortitude to insist that all candidates that you are running against are involved in every debate, or withdraw yourself so the people of Indiana's 3rd Congressional District are not disenfranchised by not hearing from all the candidates? I would like this answered in a yes or no, clear, concise answer before moving on to why.
Okay, we can start briefly on that one, but then we're talking about unity more generally, and then getting ahead of the abortion issue and how to reach out to urban voters. We start with Marlin Stutzman. We're going snaking
Okay.
back.
I guess to answer that gentleman's question, if I understood it right, I don't make the rules for these forums. I don't make the rules for these debates. I'll participate in whatever I'm invited to. As far as with leadership and unity, where there is no vision, the people perish. And right now, we don't have leaders in Washington that are casting a vision for our country. Unfortunately, back in the 80s when Ronald Reagan was president, Tip O'Neill was the Speaker of the House, what brought Americans together was the fact that we were all opposed to communism. Today, the Democrat Party is not opposed to communism. The Democrat Party is not opposed to Marxism or socialism. There is a divide in this country for a variety of reasons. And so I believe that it is very hard to cast the vision when there's one particular party that doesn't have the same values, doesn't value life, doesn't value freedom and the free market and free enterprise and the Constitution. You know, they say that we're attacking democracy. The Democrat Party is attacking Christian Judeo principles and the Constitution.
Thank you. Tim Smith again. The question about the debates and unity, getting out ahead of abortion and urban voters.
Like Marlin, I'll participate in any debate I'm invited to. We don't make the rules, so my answer is yes, I'll participate when invited. In terms of reaching the urban community, I think of it the same as reaching the suburban or exurban or rural communities. You reach them with good ideas, period. Good policies, engage in good policy discussion, regardless of where they live, what color or gender they are. It's good policy that reaches people. Earlier I said, when asked, would I talk to Democrats? I'm going to talk to a Democrat, I'm going to talk to a Republican, I'm going to talk to an urban voter, a suburban voter, a rural voter. These questions are rooted in some DC notion that we should be divided by things. Look, God made us equal. In heaven there's going to be people from every tribe and tongue. In Christ there's neither Jew nor Greek nor slave nor free nor male nor female. These things that divide us aren't necessary. So yes, good policy will reach all people groups.
Thank you. Wendy Davis, again, the idea of the debate, then unity, getting out ahead of abortion and urban voters.
So I've said it, I'm running to bring back a strong America, and so a strong America means that all of the people in the 3rd District needs to hear our voices that are in this campaign. Like Tim and Marlin, if I'm invited, I don't make the rules. If I'm invited, I will come so you can hear my voice as to who I am and why I'm running. As far as division, I had somebody the other day that's a staunch Republican tell me that they cannot vote for Donald Trump. That is a mistake. We need to stand with Donald Trump and all come together as a unified parties to put America first and to make America strong again. And lastly, as far as the black or white issue, I've been working with Youth for Christ and other urban ministries for years and years, and I agree, it's not a black and white issue. There are different issues that are unique to the urban community that we need to listen to, especially as the representative of the 3rd District. But really and truly, all Americans right now are feeling Joe Biden's failed policies. Every American, black, white, whoever, citizen, goes to the grocery store and can't afford it, goes to the gas pump and can't afford it. So I think that we need to unify the parties, all stand behind Donald Trump, and bring back a strong America.
Okay, great, thank you. Grant Bucher again, the debate question. Unity, getting out ahead of abortion and urban voters.
Yeah, on the debate issue, obviously it was disappointing to not be invited to next week's debate. The big thing for me on it that was discouraging is that the rules for it were not set ahead of time as far as, hey, here's the metric by which you get invited. And I've been encouraged over the last week to find out that while I may not be a front runner on the financial standpoint, we are within the top 4 as far as polling data goes. So we made a lot of progress without the media's direct help, and can hope for the community to continue to rise up around us and encourage us. As far as unity goes, unity is the 3rd principle of my campaign: truth, accountability, and unity. I think it's critically important that we become one people under God again, and close in some of this division that continues to separate us. We need to be able to have a rational debate with one another again, and allow worldviews that are proper and good to win out at the end of the day. But if we continue this divisiveness and say it's us versus them, then even if we solve our border issues, even if we solve our financial issues, what's it going to be for? It's all going to be for naught.
Thank you. Eric Whalen, again, the debate issue. Unity, getting out ahead on abortion and urban voters.
Yeah, no, I would not participate in a debate, whether a primary debate or a general election debate, where all the candidates were not invited, especially in a general setting where if parties were excluded. That would be terrible. The people should be deciding who represents them, not the media, and not the party either, picking winners and losers beforehand. And that's a big problem, and that goes into the outreach and unity piece too. A lot of the outreach should begin with the counties and the party chair at the county level. Unfortunately, I've witnessed a lot of problems there. And I think they need to be held responsible for outreach at that level. So that's something that I'd be interested in doing. Unity is important, but not at the expense of principle. So we need to be unified around the right ideas. We're nowhere near that right now in DC. We need opposition, we need debate, and not just a little bit, we need a lot of it to get to the right ideas that we can unify around.
Thank you. John Kenworthy, again, the issue of the debate, unity, getting out ahead on abortion and urban voters.
So on unity within the party, it takes leadership. That's how you get things done. What's leadership? It's being able to inspire people and motivate them to go the direction that you want. And how do you do that? You do that with good ideas. You do that with good communication. And you do that by listening to them too. So that's how I would tackle that. For the urban side, I grew up on the southeast side of Fort Wayne in not the greatest neighborhood. And it's a side of town that still needs a lot of help. And I haven't forgotten where I've come from. I went down, and even though there were only a handful of Republican voters on my street or even in the whole precinct, I still went down there and knocked on their doors. And I will continue to have that contact with every community, whether it's rural, urban, or suburban. And then as far as the debate, personally, I think that every candidate should be included, and it says a lot about our media that they have chosen specifically a money criteria to limit people and not looked at any other factor at all. That being said, I would participate if they asked me, and I would ask Grant or Mike or Eric to participate as well, because having just one voice that isn't a big money candidate would mean a lot for our district.
Thanks, thank you. Michael Felker, again, on the debate issue, but also unity, getting out ahead on the abortion issue and urban voters.
Okay, so as regards to debate, yeah, it's competing pools of money. That's It's why we get the government we deserve, right, America? So, I mean, it's no secret, or, you know, it's not complicated to understand why they picked what they did. At least the folks here in this building right now are going to be able to get a chance to see all of the candidates. So we appreciate whatever support that you guys can give. Not all of us have, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars to loan ourselves money. As far as the unity portion of it, we need to get unified. It's going to be a very difficult road for us. I don't know how we're going to achieve that in the next coming elections, but that's one thing that we're very poor at, and I would definitely like to push, again, back with the Freedom Caucus folks. But as far as the urban stuff and what you were talking about, it's all about knocking on doors long after the election's over. And that's, again, going back to part of my campaign, the grassroots part of it. We got to get everybody involved, and as long as we're focusing on the Constitution and doing the right thing for the American people, that's what we need to be doing, knocking on doors long after the election's over.
Okay, we're going to give final statements here, and is 60 seconds all right, you guys? Okay.
Absolutely.
We're going to go alphabetical order. That's the easiest way. I like to. So Grant Bucher, please go ahead.
Hey, thank you again, everybody, for spending the afternoon with us. We really appreciate it. So I'm running to serve each of you in Congress. I believe that our nation needs a good dose of renewal here, and I want to be a candidate that serves each of you. As a member of the construction industry, my responsibility is to represent and be accountable to the interests of others all day, every day. In that space, I have the opportunity to work with many different people who think differently than me, who are motivated differently than me, who have different life experiences than me. And I believe that I could use the servant leadership principles that I have used to bring them along with my vision for construction projects to help bring some unity and some agreement through debate on what the right next steps are in all legislation and any way that we represent the American people. I would certainly appreciate your support in May, and thank you very, very much for coming out today.
Thank you. Wendy Davis.
So you all know that I'm Judge Wendy Davis, now candidate for the 3rd Congressional District, and I am running to bring back a strong America with our next president, Donald Trump. I have served you as a judge, but I am tired to reacting to problems. I am not a career politician. I'm not a failed career politician. I ran for judge to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America. I will do so in Congress, but I reacted to legal issues, anything that come before me. I want to now pivot and make policy with you all in mind, with good conservative Christian values to bring back the strong America, which means close borders, build a wall, get our economy running again, be energy independent, get into our education system and keep the government out of it. So vote May 7th for Wendy Davis. Would love your vote. And I pray that we can take back the Senate and the White House as well.
Great, thank you. Michael Felker.
Again, hey guys, I really appreciate the opportunity. You guys came out. It says a lot about some of the folks here that actually took the time on their Sunday to actually educate themselves and kind of see who's going on running for this seat, because we hear it constantly that this is the election. This is the one that's going to determine or make and break this country. And we can't step out and forget the primary election on May 7th. The May 7th election is one of those elections where we don't get the votes. We don't have voters turnouts in Indiana. As a matter of fact, from what I'm hearing, we're about 51st because Puerto Rico's in there, and that's how poorly we are on the turnout. So we're really low on the voter turnout. So I'm asking you guys to get with your friends and family. We got to get back and take back this country, and the only way we're going to do that, again, is getting the people back involved, because you are the solution to the problems. It's just like Ronald Reagan said, the government is not the solution to our problems. The government is the problem. And of course, again, you are the solution. So Mike Felker, I appreciate your vote and your opportunity to serve you this May 7th.
Great, thank you. John Kenworthy.
Thank you for everybody that's watching remotely. If I didn't answer your question or you have more questions of me, please visit my website, kenworthyforcongress.com, or follow me on Facebook or other social media at John Kenworthy for Congress. And for those in the room, I'm happy to stay and answer questions afterwards. But I want to remind everybody, I am running on character, integrity, and experience. As far as this job goes, I have done every single portion of it, from writing legislation to conducting oversight to doing casework, every part of the job except going on the floor and taking the vote myself. And I will be ready to go and fight for you on day one, just as I fought for this country in war, just as I fought for this state while working for Senator Coates and Senator Braun. I want to fight for this district. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Tim Smith.
I'm running for Congress to end wokeness and expand freedom. For my grandchildren and yours, I believe the policies coming out of DC are destroying America. I believe they're destroying the opportunity that my grandkids and yours have. Wokeness, which we haven't talked about tonight, is a massive problem. Today on the U.S. Department of Agriculture website, racial justice and climate justice are the two primary goals. At the FAA, they're more concerned with the DEI program than getting the most qualified pilots who will get the plane off the ground and back onto the ground. The Department of Education is more concerned with critical race theory than the 3 R's. We have a major wokeness problem in America. I'm concerned that our grandchildren and future generations lack the opportunity. I'm Tim Smith. I'm running for Congress to end wokeness and expand freedom, and I'd appreciate your vote on May 7th.
Great, thank you. Marlin Stutzman.
Thank you again to all of you for participating today. It's great to be here. I'm running for Congress because I'm a tested, proven conservative. I would just want to say thank you to all of the others who are running as well. I think we've had some great debate. I think we've had discussions about ideas and solutions. I also want to thank those that have kept the campaign positive. Unfortunately, one campaign has decided to go very negative and call, there's name calling and nasty mailers that are being sent out and TV ads that I don't believe is good for the campaign. You all deserve better than that. I'm running because I'm a business owner and I know how to get things done. I also am going to run to protect medical freedom. I was the original author of the Right to Try Act that President Trump signed into law, and I'll also fight for those who were injured by the vaccine that was mandated and encouraged by the government. I'll also continue to fight to secure the border, to finish the wall, and make sure that we grow America and continue to make America the great nation that it has been and will be for our children and our grandchildren. Thank you again, and I ask you for your support on May the 7th. God bless you.
Thanks. Eric Whalen.
Thank you very much. You deserve a representative who will fight back against the uniparty and stop the spending. You know, we're dealing with a federal government that's out of control. It's weaponized against the people. We're not going to solve anything by electing status quo Republicans to offices that find solutions in cutting around the edges and fixing waste and fraud. We need big solutions to these problems. We need candidates who are willing to call out party leadership when they're wrong, and that's most of the time. We need to stop the spending. I also believe the answer is liberty. We need to restore in the people that liberty is the solution and freedom works. The promises of big government are always a lie. They never work. And it's our job to convince people that liberty is the solution. We need to get back to a government that works for the people. Again, I'm Eric Whalen. I'm running to be your voice in Congress.
Thank you, and I want to thank everyone for coming out today, and especially the people here at the Allen County Public Library, Donnie and Leanne, for helping us get this, and the Fort Wayne Media Collaborative that's going to make this available to everyone, particularly Dave and Brianna for that. And again, thanks for the candidates as well. So this is great.